from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 hours of live stream writing accountability, followed by our half-hour Max's Share What You Did wrap-up chat. So the way this live stream works, in case you're new, is that for the first 2 hours, or today, 1 hour and 48 minutes, not as late as I've been the last couple days, getting better, getting back into the swing. For the first hour and 48 minutes, I'm going to be working on my thing. You're going to be working on your thing. I'm going to have the chats of YouTube and Twitch in separate tabs so I can't see them, because if I can't see them, I'm not going to get writing done. And you are welcome to watch along, or if you're doing the write along, you can, or work along rather, you can keep this window open in this, you can keep this live stream open in a separate window, separate tab as background noise, as though we were in a shared digital workspace. And yeah, just use the chat as a place to keep a running log of what it is you're working on and what it is you're getting done during the writing portion. And I saw a thing that I need to probably, yeah, I know. So if so you keep a running log in the chat of what it is you're getting done, and then 11, during the wrap-up portion, I'm going to give you a brief summary of what all I'm getting done, and I will pop into the chat to see what accountability you've logged into the chat on your end, and also whether you're working along with me or just watching. Please feel free to put in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this later on YouTube any comments or questions you have regarding your creative projects, my creative projects, and the creative process in general, and I'll be able to discuss those things with you during the wrap-up chat as well. So yeah, let's jump into it. I am going to, again, not be screen sharing as part of my accountability, just be in the chair as my accountability, because I'm still working on things that either for privacy reasons I can't share, or specifically with the Rapunzel story I'm writing, I can't risk it being considered previously published because I'm screen sharing it. Because literary journals, particularly the one I'm applying to, I'm going to be submitting this to, Fairy Tale Review, they don't want previously published pieces. It's part of their policies. So yeah, get to work, people. All right. It is 11 a.m., which means it is time for our wrap-up chat. So the way the wrap-up chat works, in case you happen to be new, is that I'm going to first give you a brief summary of what all I got done with a little bit of the how, a little bit of the why, and then I'm going to pop into the chats to see what all you got done and what you were keeping a record of. So if you weren't using the chat to keep a running log for your own accountability purposes of what you were working on and what you were getting done, now's a good time to go ahead and start putting things in there. Let me know what it is you were working on. And whether you were working along with me or just watching, now is also a good time to pop into the chat any comments or questions you have regarding your creative projects, my creative projects, and the creative process in general. All right, so let's begin our wrap-up chat, which begins with our brief summary. So first thing I got done was I actually was responding to a comment on YouTube that I saw when I first logged in to get the live stream squared away. Someone was curious why I haven't done ASMR in a while, was wondering if I'd ever be doing it again, and I will, as I have completed projects to work on. Now, I do have some completed projects I haven't recorded as ASMR, so if you are interested in me doing gentle speaking ASMR videos, then please go visit my site, better-storytelling.com, and get familiar with my work. Compare it to what's going on my YouTube channel, bit.ly/R Rose J Music. Find something that you want to hear read in my gentle speaking voice and or bedtime voice, as I used it when I was a babysitter / nanny, and anytime I put a kid down for a nap, my niece or nephew now included. And yeah, just let me know what it is I haven't recorded yet that you would want to hear as an ASMR video. That way when I finish tweaking what's going on with my schedule regarding my new job, which that schedule is about to change again, which means I'm going to have to be recalibrating again. But as soon as I do have that recalibrated, again, let me know what it is you want recorded, and I'll see what I can do about that. So that was that. Then I went on to Buffer and I queued up my book of, not exactly for kids, but about kids, poetry book, Lying to Children, which was originally a Kickstarter project, which for every dollar contributed, I would write a poem about a lie that some adult had told to some child. And it could be a lie that you were told as a child, a lie that you told a child yourself, or if you couldn't think of any lies, it could be you could just get in the mail a poem from me of a lie that I was told, or that someone in my family told, that I told, because when you're babysitting, you say things to kids. And so for every dollar you would get a poem in the mail. And so from that project on Kickstarter, I wrote a book of poems because I was using Kickstarter the way its name suggests it should be used, which is to get something started, not the way most people use it, which is to get the selling started. So, anywho, then I wrote my blog post for today, which was my gush / review of having switched to the iPad 6 and Apple Pencil for my bullet journaling needs. I mean, look at this. This thing is smaller than a composition notebook. I can prove it because I have a composition notebook. Here, let me turn up the mic a little bit because I keep forgetting to do that. There we go. I have a composition notebook right here. So as you can see, side-by-side comparison, the composition notebook is sticking out there. And then side-by-side comparison, you can see that the iPad is thinner than the composition book. It's not as lightweight because this, of course, is made out of metal, and this is made out of paper. Glass and metal, paper, and some very thin cardboard. but it's not that much heavier. It's still, and I compare it to this just because you can imagine then, don't drop things, don't drop things, Rosie. You can then imagine just how much more convenient, like, because a composition, I switched from using journals that were a little thicker than a composition notebook. I switched from using those for my bullet journaling to this giant binder with its hundreds of pages. And so again, another side-by-side comparison, how much larger this binder is than the iPad, and yet the iPad holds so much more. And I was just using this and then rotating pages in and pages out as the months were coming and going. And yeah, I got the iPad and pencil to have the bullet journaling in the iPad rather than in the binder. But I still use notebooks and journals for poetry uses. Other writing purposes, not so much. But poetry, yes. Specifically because, and this didn't make it into today's blog post, specifically because when I'm at Prof Slam, you know, we're all writing poems as we hear each other read or recite poems on the stage. And, you know, we turn off our phones, we turn off our technologies in order to be respectful of each other. And the way that poems, performance poems, in the moment poems, there are some poems that end up getting written in here during the day. Basically, when I know I'm probably going to be in a dark space, a public space, writing a poem, that's when a journal or composition notebook is gonna, or some kind of notebook is going to come out and be used for writing, so that the glow of the screen isn't disruptive to what's going on performance-wise. So I do still have the analog, and that's something I'm getting squared away as I continue iterating on using this for bullet journaling, and then also having it for journaling other things. For instance, after I finish the blog post for today, and I usually start off writing the blog post, or at least outlining the blog post on my iPad. The last few days I haven't, just because I'm getting back into the rhythm of writing something into the blog post. It's getting it out. But these last few days I've been working on Rapunzel rather than working on it on my typewriter. I've been working on it here in my iPad. I can show you. Some of my writing is, well, the notes that you can see, like here in the corner, about the herb sage is written forward, but then my cursive is backwards. But yeah, it's the kind of story that I felt I just needed to be writing it out by hand. I didn't want to be typing it until I get to the point of prepping the document and formatting how it's going to look when it gets submitted. But yeah, so I use it for pretty much all of my projects now, and it's a lot more lightweight, but I can also access all of my productivity spreadsheets, like my budgeting spreadsheet and the spreadsheet I built to track my progress in terms of just maintaining a healthy body fat percentage. I'm at about 26 right now. I'm just kind of hovering around there, which is, you know, the low end of what's called acceptable body fat. So I'm within the healthy range, the central healthy range, and I'm at the low end of it. Not quite fit, definitely not athletic, but I'm close. I'm right next to the line between acceptable body fat and fit body fat. So I have that spreadsheet, and then I also have a spreadsheet that I use for When I'm working on a larger project that has different legs to the journey of it, I track how much time I spend working on it, how much I get done on average working on it, and then put those numbers and how much is left to the project overall into a spreadsheet calculator that I built that gives me an estimated time of completion, like based on how big this project is, how much I'm getting done, and the rate at which I'm getting it done, when am I likely to be done with it, and it gives me, like from today, what my estimated time of completion is. So those are different things that I can access from my bullet journal, aka my iPad, anywhere. So that's nice. Anywho, back to the review. I was working on Rapunzel, and I've made some really solid progress. I'm now up to the herb rosemary, and I'm still deciding whether or not time is going to be time the herb or time the construct. I will know when I have finished working with the herb rosemary and how it fits into my retelling of Rapunzel. For those who don't know, Rapunzel was originally Personette, or Little Parsley, right? She wasn't named for Rapunculus, Rapun, or Rampion, a flower called Rampion bellflower. She wasn't originally named for that. She was named for she wasn't renamed for Rapunculus. She was named for Parsley. Bellflower, at that time in history, was known as a sort of cure-all herb. So it would make sense that a woman might be craving it while pregnant and her husband would go trying to acquire it for her. But in the original fairy tale, it was actually a young woman with an unwanted pregnancy seeking out a well-known amenagog, parsley, in order to gorge herself on it in the middle of the night when no one was looking and induce an abortion, which is a very, very unsafe thing to do alone and without any sort of medical guidance whatsoever. Very dangerous. Don't do it. So there's that. But as an amenagog, like taking it around the time that your period's supposed to show up to help regulate your period, totally cool. Make yourself some parsley tea. Or make yourself a little herbal blend of parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Use a scoop of that to make yourself some tea at the time it's supposed to be your period. Because all of those teas, all of them, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, do they sound familiar? They should. They are all amenagogs. They are all teas that help get the blood flowing. Sage, while it gets blood flowing, actually stops milk from flowing. So I finished writing that section of the story today, and again, getting it to the rosemary, and very excited about finishing the story and submitting it to Fairy Tale Review for their pink issue. So that is my brief summary. Now I'm going to pop into the chat to see your accountability. What did you get done? What were you working on? And respond to any comments and questions you have about your projects, my projects, and the creative process in general. So let's look at YouTube first. Nothing in the chat. That is okay. There usually isn't anything in the chat. It's not really YouTube. I'm more streaming there for the archive of it. And people do comment on the videos when they're videos and not live streams. But so now we move on to Twitch. Imagines Tibber says, how does this work exactly? Well, as you can see right now, there is this border that tells you off to the side, 2 hours of live stream writing, so we're just getting writing done, followed by the wrap-up chat, which is where we are now. Today, in particular, I used this border, which puts the 2-hour live stream writing up here and the wrap-up chat info down here. While on the side, it lets you know that the reason I'm not screen sharing is just to protect whatever project it is I happen to be working on. This story of Rapunzel, I'm specifically writing it to submit to Fairy Tale Review. They do not allow the submission of pieces that are previously published. So I don't screen share in the off chance that screen sharing the work as I'm writing it would be considered previously published. So that's why I do that. I also have this border, which lets you know I'm doing housework, as a way of clearing my head, get the energy going, and also to reduce the distraction of having a messy workspace. As you can see behind me, there is some tidying and housework that needs to happen, but it's not at a level that was distracting to me. But today is Thursday, which is chores day, but I'm getting housework done and also some light household errand type things. Wednesdays are more for errands. Thursday are sort of catch-up errands or paperwork, things like that. But it's mostly chores, things having to do with the household and the running of the house. And then usually I'm using this screen, the screen share, so you can see off to one side, because you can see off to one side, you know, where I have OBS open right now, and you can see on the other side that I have Twitch open. Because of how things are situated, I cannot see the chat, so I'll actually click over here in order to be able to see the chat. But as you can also see in the window when I'm screen sharing, I'm working with multiple tabs so that I'm not inadvertently seeing the chat when I'm trying to get writing done. Because if I can see the chat when I'm trying to get writing done, I'm not getting writing done. It's the way my OCD works. That's why I work in a tabbed window and why I have a separate wrap-up chat time from the morning writing time. So it's get the writing done, then we'll talk. Because if I'm talking to you while I'm writing, I'm not writing. My brain is in conversation mode or it's in writer mode. It can't do both at the same time. Actually, no brain can do both at the same time. We trick ourselves into thinking multitasking is a thing. What we're really doing is slowing down our work. FYI. Anywho, back to what's going on in the Twitch chat. TX Screenwriter says, good morning, so what is your opinion on writer's block? Is it a thing or not a thing? It is and it isn't. Writer's block was invented by Percy Bysshe Shelley, the guy who wrote, what, 6 or 7 real good poems and then nothing else. He basically wrote an essay explaining what writer's block was to excuse the fact that he was not a prolific writer. The thing is, writer's block happens because you tell yourself that it happens. You're saying, oh, I don't have an idea right now, so there's nothing I can write. It's like, well, maybe you just start talking to yourself, because nobody ever gets talker's block, as Seth Godin likes to say. Nobody ever got talker's block, so just start talking to yourself. And then when you start ranting to yourself, as tends to happen with those of us who regularly talk to ourselves, then all of a sudden you've got something to write about and start writing about it. Or just start writing random memories. I remember when, or I remember, and you just start with those 2 words and you'll bring a memory and it'll kickstart writing. Or if you're trying to write something in particular but you can't bring yourself to write that thing, what you're dealing with isn't writer's block. It's what your brain is writer's block comes in that moment. What appears to be writer's block comes from that same place of where procrastination comes from, right? Procrastination is just your brain signaling to you that the thing that you meant to be that you intended to work on isn't something you're actually ready to work on in this moment. There's some competing distraction going on, some competing priority, whether it's you being tired, you being hungry, you being sick, you being lonely, you thinking to yourself, I'm in my house, and in my house, my options are to work on my writing or to work on cleaning my house. And the cleaning house, like, there's a saturation point. It's like, how messy can my home be before it becomes a distraction from the writing and I can't think about anything else? Now I'm clicking over here, waiting for the decision to be made, rather than just, you know, temporarily going over here until I have this idea jump into my head, which it always does when you're doing something physical, and then you go back to the writing. So writer's block, like procrastination, is just your brain saying, you're not in writing mode right this second. You're in some other mode. You need to do something that's going to get you into writing mode, that's going to get you into idea mode, or you just need to do something else that your brain has decided is a higher priority right now? Or is that a competing priority that's just gumming up the works? But it isn't really writer's block. It's just action block. It's just procrastination. It's just, I'm not ready in this moment to do the thing that I wanted to do in this moment. So I need to take this moment to do something else to get my brain into gear, to kick it into gear. McHugh's Casey says, turn mic up. I have done that. Oh my God, does she read chat during this moment? Not during the start of the wrap-up chat when I'm giving the brief summary. When I'm just trying to give the brief summary, or when I'm doing the beginning spiel, when I'm introducing the video before I start writing, or when I'm doing the wrap-up spiel, those 3 times I'm not looking at the I'm not looking at the chat. Also, when I'm writing, I'm not looking at the chat because, again, my OCD. McHugh's Gaming says, I think writer's block is a thing in some ways. It is, just I don't think writer's block is the right name for it, which is why I went on the rant that I did. McHugh's Gaming says, that sounds gross, Mom. I'm going to pass. I'm guessing that you're referring to the parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme tea. No tea for me. I mean, some people don't like tea. That's cool. I am an amateur herbalist. And I am such because I find that trying to manage my OCD in as analog or as natural a way as possible is the least stressful way of managing it. And because it's an anxiety-based condition, even the management tool of OCD itself needs to be less stressful than the other modes, which are specifically medication, which historically I have tried, and I've never gotten the primary effect of any medication I've taken. I've only gotten the side effects. And then I'll tell a doctor that, and they'll be like, oh, let me up the prescription, and then give you this other prescription to manage this side effect, but then this medication isn't giving you its primary effect, it's just giving you its side effects. I'm just going to take willow bark tea instead of aspirin. I'm just going to, make rosemary infused whole wheat sourdough bread instead of taking antidepressants. I'm going to bullet journal instead of talking to people who are trying to get me to do things that don't actually make sense compared to what works. So Tick Screenwriter says, come for the accountability, stay for the women's reproductive health information. McHugh's Gaming says, I just woke up, I got nothing done. It happens. You just have to figure out the right writing schedule for you. You don't necessarily need to work along with me. You can watch along. If you're going to do that, I suggest popping in at around 11 because that's when the chatting actually happens. Tick Screenwriter says, come on, YouTube, get your act together. It's just a different platform. People go to YouTube not really expecting live stream. They go expecting the finished video. They want the thing that they can comment on and it not be live, and there's that little bit of distance. That's just the context on YouTube, whereas Twitch, it's always been about live streaming. It's always been about that direct interaction. So it's a different context over here. It's a different room. McHugh's Gaming says this, TX Screenwriter. McHugh's Gaming says screen share for ants. Yes, when I screen share, what I'm looking at does look smaller, but that's because I'm screen sharing as accountability. I'm not really screen sharing so that you can read it. My screen is set up so that it has the best visual appeal for me as I'm working. I can see as much as I want to see. I can see it at the percentage size that I want to see it. Everything makes sense for my aesthetic sensibilities because it's my computer that I'm working on. I'm screen sharing so you know that I'm being honest about what it is I'm working on when I screen share. When I'm working on my typewriter or my iPad, you're just going to have to trust me that that's what's going on with those two technologies. With the housekeeping, clearly you can see whether or not I'm cleaning my kitchen, whether or not I'm folding laundry. Like, that accountability is pretty straightforward. That's a very visual thing. So, but yeah, there's cleaning that needs to happen. Not too much. Not too much. It's a good day. I have other things that need to get done besides cleaning chore wise, but it's not too bad right now. Magoose Gaming says, I love procrastination. And TX Screenwriter says, I have the spiritual gift of procrastination. Magoose Gaming says, it's a beautiful thing. And then it goes to T. So again, procrastination, some people really enjoy it. They enjoy that moment of getting, like, cycling through doing something else or whatever. Or maybe you were being facetious, I don't know. With my OCD, one of my compulsions is this thing called pervasive avoidance, which there are two ways that pervasive avoidance happens. It's either clinical indecision or clinical procrastination. The indecision being, again, what I was mentioning before about competing priorities. You can't choose between the right one. You're between the two. You're scared that if you choose the wrong one, that somehow it's going to cause the world to end or for everyone on the planet to hate you. So then you're frozen. You're stuck in your head, just stressing out over the decision of which of these things do I do. It's not great. You can get stuck in that mode. I have gotten stuck in that mode for hours. I got stuck in that mode for a whole day a couple of times. And the other one, the clinical procrastination type pervasive avoidance, is where you're concentrated on this one thing, but you're so worried about messing up that one first step of the thing or of moving along, and that first step was the wrong first step to have taken, so then you're taking all these wrong steps, and then you're screwing up a step later, and you're so scared of screwing up some one little piece of the puzzle moving on that you just don't do anything. That clinical procrastination has led to many people with OCD being misdiagnosed as having a kind of psychosis. Psychosis or psychotic conditions, as opposed to psychopathy or psychopathic conditions. Psychopathy, psychopathic has to do with lack of emotion or a lack of being able to retain an emotive experience. Psychosis, psychotic, is where physiologically there's nothing wrong with you, but for whatever reason, your mental processes just aren't allowing you to do a thing, and that can inadvertently make you a danger to yourself or to others. And so there are people who they can't get out of bed in the morning because they're worried of sitting up the wrong way. They can't walk across a room because they're actually scared of taking one step the wrong way. And it's very, with psychosis, there are people who just won't walk. They'll just stop walking, and they have no reason for not walking. They've just stopped. Bartleby Scrivener style, really. I just don't want to. I'm just not motivated at all. Whereas a person with OCD, they want to walk across the room, they want to get out of bed, but they can't bring themselves to do it because they're so terrified of doing that wrong. So I understand empirically why somebody might like procrastination, just wasting time for the sake of wasting time, just having fun, shooting the shit. But when I think about procrastination, I think about all those times that I was accused of procrastination, but I was actually trapped of procrastinating, of wasting time, but I was actually trapped in my head and nobody knew it, and I didn't have the words to explain it. And pervasive avoidance was only discovered to be a sort of compulsive non-action on the OCD spectrum very recently, within the last 10 years. Before that, everybody was getting misdiagnosed as having some form of undetermined psychosis. And even now, because there are so few studies regarding pervasive avoidance, there are still people getting misdiagnosed as having psychosis, which was actually a big part of the reason I myself ended up taking antipsychotic medications for a while, because when I finally was able to explain to a doctor this sensation of being trapped in my head, it sounded like psychosis to them, so they gave me antipsychotics. Which were never going to work because it was an anxiety-based thing. Maku's Gaming says, I only like sweet tea because I hail from farmlands. Nice. Nice. I grew up in the Midwest and I got me some Appalachian roots on my mama's side, so I hear that. TX Screenwriter says, I like Irish breakfast tea. So do I, though I can only drink it decaf. Maku's Gaming says, yeah, I don't have that. I quickly snap myself, pervasive avoidance. Yeah, I don't have that. I quickly snap myself into making decisions, so I keep moving. Sorry you can't do that sometimes. TX Screenwriter says, surely there is an anti-procrastination tea you can brew. Maku's Gaming says, I can see that mental illness. I feel like people feel like that, but not for a long time. Most people do like what I said, just snap into action, but I can see people not being able to. That's depressing. Wrote that poorly because waking up brain. Anti-procrastination tea is called coffee. Not necessarily. So in terms of anti-procrastination tea, you want tea that is invigorating, tea that gets things flowing, gets things moving. Amenagogal teas are teas that get things flowing, get things moving. They get things going, which is why they're used as amenagogues. In terms of keeping the mind mentally engaged and keeping the mind focused, sage and rosemary are two very potent herbs for that reason. They are both, sage has been used for Alzheimer, like to combat Alzheimer's. Rosemary has been used to help with stimulate memory retention, and they're both very good for memory. They're both very good for thinking things through. Whoa. What? It's 11:33. That's why my brain just went like whoosh, that. So they're very good for mental stimulus, but they're also, because they're part of mental stimulation, they're also very good as anti-anxiety and anti-depression teas, which is really the important thing. That's the thing that helps me combat my compulsions. And I have to put combat in quotes because, as discussed here previously, I'm not a punch fear in the face, push through resistance person. I'm not. I can't be, because that just makes the anxiety stronger. Because if I look at it as an enemy, then it's just like, well, then I need to get bigger until you can see me for what I really am, kind of a subconscious logic. But yeah, OCD is an anxiety-based condition. Not being in control, like what happens with pervasive avoidance, is depressing. Most depression is this sense of lack of control. So taking anti-anxiety, anti-depression herbs like sage and rosemary that are also good for general cognitive stimulus are good. Coffee for me is not. Coffee can be overstimulating. I actually start my day with a very small cup of cocoa with a dash of instant coffee and a spoonful of coconut oil. And I drink that before I exercise in the morning. So the caffeine, I'm using it to boost my metabolism along with the coconut oil to help boost the effects of my morning exercise. But I'm also exercising right after I have caffeine, not only so the caffeine is boosting the fat burning from the exercise, but also so my body is burning off the extra energy from that caffeine. Because I'm a morning person, I don't need caffeine in the morning. And two, I've run tests, and you can actually look up on my blog, better-storytelling.com, click the link for blog, and you can look up coffee, and there is a blog post about an experiment I ran about how much coffee my body can withstand in the early afternoon when I'm running out of energy, and having coffee in place of a nap that I can withstand and I won't get trapped in my head. Because coffee as a stimulant can actually cause the brain to become overactive. And it's when it's overactive that I can't slow down and be mindful and stop my OCD from taking control. And so if my brain is overstimulated, that means my OCD is clicked into control, and I can just be sitting there frozen, and I can't even think straight to make a decision about what I should do. I'm not everything feels like it's happening at once. It's not just two competing priorities anymore. It's everything in my life is now equal priority, and I'm scared even if I choose whenever I choose that just starting it I'll screw up. So all the anxiety all at once comes up if I have too large of a cup of coffee. So I can have basically, if I'm getting coffee out in public, if it's around lunchtime, 12 ounces. If it's after 1 o'clock, it needs to be 8 or 6 ounces of coffee. But any more than a 12-ounce coffee out in public at any time is going to be trouble for Rosie. Or even here, if I, use enough of the instant coffee to make a 12-ounce cup of coffee at the wrong time of day, I'm screwed. I'm screwed. TX Screenwriter wrote this in referring to coffee as the anti-procrastination tea. Maku's Gamey says, prescribe me my anti-procrastination tea, Mom. It's sage and rosemary, in my opinion. But I don't actually drink those as tea. Like I said, I make a rosemary infusion, which is rosemary tea, but then I don't strain the rosemary out. I leave the herb in, which you would do for any culinary purpose, and then I use the water as the liquid portion of making my own bread. And so then I get the benefits of rosemary in the form of bread, and plus just all those hours of the smell of rosemary just filling the apartment is so nice. First from the infusion happening, and then from the baking happening. Oh my God. And just the smell of sage, just the smell of rosemary can also have those antidepressant, anti-anxiety effects, which is one of the reasons that rosemary and sage are used specifically, most especially sage, are used in those bundles that people set on fire and they sage a space. They're using it to clear the air, like to actually clear the air spiritually. And it helps actually cognitively to clear the air, because breathing it in is so wonderful. TX Screenwriter says, you're an invite Fear to sit down and sip on some Amenagog tea with me person. Yes, I am. 100 friggin' percent I am. Maku's Gamey says, that sounds like a version of bulletproof coffee. No coffee for you then. Yeah, no, only in those teeny tiny, very controlled doses. But whatever, you go out with friends for coffee. You know what coffee shops also sell? Cocoa. And there I go. Cocoa. It's all I need. All right, so double check there's nothing on YouTube. Nope. And it looks like we've reached the bottom of the comments here on Twitch, which is great. Now I'm switching over to not being able to see the chat at all. And to prove it, look, screen share. There we go. So it is time for the wrap up spiel, because it's 11:39, which means we are in the wiggle room where the spiel needs to happen so I can continue with my other OCD management routines. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm Roaster Music, your live stream writing accountability partner, here weekday mornings from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 hours of live stream writing accountability, followed by our half-hour Max's Share What You Did wrap-up chat. And I strongly encourage you to come back for the wrap-up chats and to partake in the accountability exercise if you are so inclined, if it works for your work schedule and for your creative schedule, I should say. But yes, always come back for the chats to talk about what it is that you're working on, what it is that you're getting done, what it is that to talk about your projects, my projects, and the creative process in general. Because the more we can talk about what it is we're working on and how it is we're working on it, the more we can iterate on those things, and the more we can, little by little, improve the stories that we're telling ourselves, that we're telling each other, and that we're telling together as a collective family, community, society, and little by little, build a better world through better storytelling. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Good journey, my friend.